been recorded, but also the breakout session. So you'll have the ability to go into the 201s and the 301s as you see fit. Let's start by doing introductions. My name is Dr. Nick Arman. I am a counselor coordinator at Fullerton College. I oversee veteran services. And Peggy, I'd let you introduce yourself.
And I'm Peggy Campo. I am the faculty lead at Norco College for our military articulation platform. I teach anatomy and physiology. I've been a faculty member of a California community college for the past 15 years. And I look forward to hopefully clarifying some of those acronyms that were used in the introduction and help you get things moving in your college towards articulating military credit.
There's Kevin. Thanks for joining us, buddy. We were concerned about you.
No, I was here when you were talking about me. They were trying to assign me into the group.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I knew we had some struggles with IT, but go ahead, Kevin, introduce yourself.
Okay. So my name is Kevin Benitez. I'm a counselor coordinator for the Veteran Success Center at Santa Monica College. I also teach counseling classes and the return like boots to books type campus classes at USC, LMU, and Santa Monica.
Thank you, Kevin. So we were asked, so Peggy, Kevin, and I were asked to present to you the basics, the very entry level 101. What is a JST? What is an MOS? How do we serve our student veterans? So some of you, this might be your first exposure to navigating the world of business in terms of how we serve our student veterans. And some of you may be a little bit more advanced. So for those that are more advanced, please bear with us. And we apologize as some of it may be rudimentary in nature, but that's why we are in the 101 section. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. Here we go. All right. I can't see you anymore, but can I at least somebody verbally tell me that you can see my screen?
Good to go, Nick.
All right. Wonderful. So let's get started, folks. So here's some outcomes for today and what we can expect to learn from this presentation. We hope that you will have some experience and understand with what it's like to go through military training versus the civilian, or rather the higher education setting in the classroom platform. We're going to review what an American Council on Education military guide is, i.e. the Joint Service Transcript, what an MOS or military occupational specialty is, and some recommendation through the ACE courses. We're going to talk about faculty evaluations and how those are done for the JSTs and the ACE transcripts, credit recommendations, and we'll also speak about some parallels with regard to other ways in terms of how credit for prior learning is provided to our student and military students. So let's kind of back up a little bit and talk about what's the entry into the service or into the military is like. It's going to be very similar for most folks, regardless of what branch of the military they serve in. In order for an individual to enter into the military, in addition to a battery of physical exams, they will have to complete what's called the Armed Forces Vocational Aptitude Battery, aka ASVAB. So some of you may have heard that acronyms. If you haven't, you'll hear it throughout today. And ASVAB is something that has been significantly heavily researched by the Department of Defense. And what it's designed to do in nature is to measure the young adult strength and their potential to be successful in military training. Okay, and using their scores, right? So there's a factor in how they score, and that will delineate, or rather give the individual some options in terms of what their job in the military will be. So somebody coming in, they're a senior or just graduated from high school and say, I really want to go into this particular field. I want to go to intelligence. I want to go into infantry. I want to go into signal, etc. But that may not necessarily be what they actually end up doing. In fact, in most cases, it's not what happens, because their scores on their exams, on their ASVAB scores, will dictate what their military occupational specialty is. So let's talk a little bit about what an MOS is, a military occupational specialty, right? So that's their role, that's their job, it's what they end up doing in the military. Across the different branches, there are over 10,000 different occupational specialties or jobs. And so think of your civilian transition when you're done with high school. Many will go into college or a university setting. Some will, move abroad and get jobs. And what would dictate or determine what the student will or the individual will do? Their interest. And so in the military, similarly, when you are selecting an MOS based on interest and alignment with your scores, that's what the individual will do. And that's where the training begins. And that's how we're going to look at the parallel between military training and civilian training, or rather a college classroom. How do I change the screen? Oh, there we go. So I'm going to go over just briefly over some types of different military trainings. And so you kind of have an idea when we're talking about providing credit for prior learning for military training specifically, and how that translates into a college transcript. We're going to go over some basic types of training. So initially, an individual joining the military, they'll go through all their battery of testings, they'll go through MEPS, and then they will enter into basic training, oftentimes referred to as boot camp. Depending on the branch of service the individual chooses to serve in, they will undergo an 8 or up to 13 weeks of training. This particular training phase or experience is very skills testing. So they will learn specific skills within their boot camp or training, and it also is phase-based. In other words, if an individual is not able to pass a specific phase within the overall umbrella of their training, the required training, they will not continue. And then they get recycled and go back to, and then they would try again. I didn't say this about myself, but I am a veteran of both the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Having served in both branches, I only had to attend boot camp one time, and that was in the Marine Corps. But I have personally seen many folks get recycled a number of times, and oftentimes not being able to successfully, I'm going to use the word matriculate, or rather pass a specific phase. They are separated, administratively separated from the military. So then they go into what's called advanced training, and that's going to be called something different based on the branch. In the Army, they call it AIT, or Advanced Individualized Training. And in the Marine Corps, they call it MOS school, or Military Occupational Specialty Training. And this particular training modality focuses on skills that the individual needs to learn in order for them to be successful in the job in which they're going to do in the military. Specialized training, specialized skills really more focus on specific skills related to their job. So I'll give you an example. If you have an individual entering the military and they're going to go into infantry, after basic training, they're going to go into AIT, or in the Marine Corps, it's called SOI, or School of Infantry. Now, while you're in School of Infantry, I'm going to use that as an example. You are undergoing training specific to what you're going to do as a basic infantryman or basic rifleman. Now, with that, an individual who is in the infantry, but perhaps assigned to an airborne division, they will be sent to airborne school, or perhaps if you're in special forces, you might go to scuba diving school, air assault, etc. Leadership development training is offered to those who achieve the rank of non-commissioned officer, and those are usually entry-level leadership position. And so they do have to attend leadership development training, and those are generally, with the pandemic, things have changed significantly in terms of how these training modalities are offered. But generally, the leadership courses or leadership schools are academy-based, so they're going to live amongst their fellow students, if you will, kind of a dorm setting. And they're going to get to know them very intimately. They're going to, depending on the rank that the individual achieves or promoted into, the training is longer and longer and more detailed. And at that point, they will need to demonstrate a significantly higher level of competency and proficiency with what they have learned or acquired in their schools. Because ultimately, now that they have gone into these leadership roles, what essentially that is saying that they are the experts in their field, and they're going to go out and lead non-commissioned enlisted folks who are learning how to perform and be successful within their jobs. Additional skills training. So as an example, I shared that there's over 10,000 jobs in the military. So if your job is to be a mail carrier, and yes, believe it or not, there is such job in the military. And if you learn how to be a mail carrier and that's your job, perhaps they're going to send you to specialized training where you can learn how to manage or work within a unit mail room, which is slightly different than carrying mail. So it's just an example of additional skills training. Now, here's where I like to show the parallel, right? Course evaluation. In a classroom, student learning outcome, we know how that's measured via exams, via assignments, presentations, and as faculty, we get to choose which assignments or how we're going to assess that, right? Excuse me, I haven't had enough coffee this morning. Now, in the military, that's going to be very different. Now, I want to go back to the classroom, the college classroom. At Fulton College, we have a very robust CTE program, right? And we have auto shop, we have welding, we have fashion, cosmetology, and the list goes on. And so how do you assess learning outcomes for the folks in the CTE classroom? Well, majority of the times, no different than that of your STEM folks who are taking lab science courses, it's going to be hands-on, or perhaps it'll be a hybrid of both lecture. So you'll have the exams and then you'll have your hands-on. So in the military, I would say that it's mostly kinesthetic. You're not going to be tested on the theoretical approach and how to do your job. So I spoke with some students over this week because it's been a number of years since I've been out, and I thought perhaps maybe the way the military approaches assessment could have changed, or evaluation. And I've spoken to folks that were admin, automotive, mechanics, infantry, and then a signal analyst. And the one conclusion that I have come to is, regardless of what your job is in the military, whoever is evaluating your job performance and your ability to be successful in a formal classroom training modality, they're going to have a list, and that list will consist 2 columns. One will say pass, and the other one say no pass, or go or no go, depending on the branch. And so, although your training modality could be in the classroom for 6 months, ultimately, the way you are evaluated is by having somebody, for instance, a signal analyst. They'll say, okay, I want you to write me this code, and I want you to show me how this is going to get done. How do you perform this particular approach to your analysis, et cetera. And it's also phase-based. So if you can't pass one, you're not going to be able to get into the next level. So ultimately, very hands-on in terms of how they're evaluated. Military instructors and higher ed faculty evaluators, one parallel that I want to draw is that we're all experts within our field. So if you're a military instructor, not only you're an expert within your MOS, but you are also sent to instructor school where you are becoming an expert in your field. Same thing with faculty and evaluators. We are experts because we have professional degrees sometimes, and if not, we have graduate level degrees and certifications in the area and discipline in which we teach. The military is the same way. And I'm just going to briefly introduce what a joint transcript is, because you did hear about it a little bit earlier, and you're going to hear a lot about it in this presentation. It's a joint service transcripts, which provides documentation or documented evidence to higher ed institutions of the service members' experience, their training, their education that they have attained and achieved. So I'm going to pass this on to Kevin. Thanks, Kevin.
Cool. Thank you, Dr. Arman. Okay, so thank you everybody for being here. So the basically this is, you know, the basics for 101. So I just wanted to kind of cover what a joint transcript actually looks like, so you know what you're looking at when a student presents it to you or they have it sent to the college or the university. So the joint service transcript, the information that's included in it is their personal service member data. So it'll have like their social security number, their name, pretty much any type of training that they attended. Like Dr. Arman said, you know, any type of training, advanced training, anything that they've done, courses, whether they were in the military or they took courses while they were in the military, but with a specific university. So I'll show you what that kind of looks like and the differences. And then it has any type of course completions. So with that said, things like, I'll speak on my behalf. So like Dr. Arman, I'm an Army veteran and I was military police. So I went to military police school and I learned basically the same thing you would learn during a associate's degree for criminal justice. So in that time, I guess the justification would be for that I learned almost everything through an associate's degree, but within a 6 month to a year period. So with that said, it shows any type of transcripts, anything that I've done in military police school, whether it's, I don't know, arson investigation, drug and paraphernalia investigation, stuff like that was on my JST, for example. Then it'll have things like CLEP, there's Dante's. If anybody has not heard of CLEP, it stands for College Level Examination Program. And what that is, it basically helps you receive credit for what you already know for a fraction of what the college, you know, so it's almost like you're testing out of these courses. So a lot of students will, or a lot of veterans will take these exams and expect to get credit for them once they go to college. And then Dante's is the same thing. These are used to get promoted in the military, right? So any of these type of courses, trainings, everything, they count as points. So when you are an enlisted service member, you can use these points to get promoted to sergeant, staff sergeant, and higher up leadership. So a lot of students that are veterans have a lot of these credits, especially if you're getting those that are, you know, in the higher ranks. It'll have any other learning experiences, any academic institutions that they took that are not related to the military. So that's, I'll show that in a little bit. And then the JST, I looked this up, it's accepted by more than 2,300 colleges and universities across I would say the nation, but also in other countries. So when you have service members that are exiting the military, let's say in Germany, Italy, Korea, Japan, right? They if they want to stay and go to school there, they always have campuses that accept JSTs because they're military friendly. The electronic JSTs are free. So the student member or the military does not, or the students do not have to pay to receive these or have them sent to the college. And then the website is noted right there. This is where you would receive your JST. Next slide. Thank you. So I don't know if you could see this image. Obviously, the slides are going to go to everybody, but this is what a JST looks like. So this is one of my students. I just erased his name and crossed out his social. But if you see on the image on the left, it has all of his military training. And then towards the bottom, it'll have the CLEP and the Dante's that I was referring to earlier. So if you look on the image on the right, it actually has classes that that we would see at a community college, right? Whether it's psychology or intro to philosophy, all these classes. And then it'll have the credit that should be awarded based on the service, on what is on the joint service transcript. So most of the time we'll have students coming to us and say, hey, I have a JST. In this particular case, he has, what is that, 4 classes. And, he wants credit for these classes. So if the student or if the college doesn't have an articulation platform to support them, unfortunately, we normally tell them, at least at SMC, we normally tell them like, hey, you can use these joint service transcripts at the university level. We don't have an articulation platform or some way to articulate these classes. And one of the reasons is because in the military, when you receive credit for these courses, it's normally done by hours compared to where you would have the traditional quarter or semester system. It's usually done by hours. So for example, for me, if I did arson investigation, which is maybe a class that you would find in a criminal justice program at a community college, I maybe did 40 to 60 hours of it, and therefore I got credit for it. But that's going to show up on my joint service transcript as 3, where it says credits, it's going to show up as a 3. So understanding that difference is very critical when we're trying to articulate some of these classes. Next slide, please. Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so then I did more of a close-up on the image on the left, the top left. That is what the joint service transcript would look like if the service member requested it. So you can go onto the website. I'll go on to that in the next slide. And if they requested it themselves, they can download it, and then that's what they would bring to the counselor. It's an unofficial transcript. It has the same information, but if you notice on that image on the top left, it'll say that it was assigned to that particular person, that student. And then the bottom image, the bottom left image is actually when it got, that's what it would look like as official when it got sent to the actual college or university. Then the image on the right, this is where you're going to find institution courses, right? So you're going to see on there, it says University of Maryland. So this student took these classes while they were serving, but they took them in a program that maybe, let's say if they were in the Marine Corps and they're stationed out in Maryland, a lot of these universities have agreements and MOUs with the service branch, and they'll teach classes, whether on base, they'll even teach them, I've heard, on a ship for the Navy. And they will have classes where the student will actually sit down with an instructor, but the student is in uniform, right? And they get time to get away and go to class. So these are more easy to articulate because of the fact that you can actually go into stuff like TES, your own articulation platform, and look up University of Maryland and then articulate these courses, right? So those are a little bit easier, but those will show up on the JST if the student has taken them while they were in the military. So
Kevin, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do have a question from somebody that asked the units when they're listed on the JST, are they semester credit or quarter credit, or what is it what does it mean by credits?
And that's where it gets a little iffy because when they're listed on there, like I was saying before, if I've completed the course, so I'll just keep using myself as an example. I did not use my own JST on here. I should have. But I took a class on, let's say, criminal investigation. That's a typical class that you would take, or introduction to criminal justice, administration of justice. I completed the course in the military, but I only did, I think it's required 70 hours or 80 hours to do the course with an instructor and everything. And on my JST, it shows up as a 3. So it's not a quarter or semester. It just, that's how it shows with, because I completed it. However, you normally learn the rest of the stuff on the job training. So if you were to give me, I'll give you an example. If you were to give me an exam for me to test out of Intro to Criminal Justice, I would probably pass it with an A because of the fact that I not only was trained for 80 hours, but I've actually done the job in the military. So that's where it becomes tough to articulate because you cannot, you can't substitute hours for quarters and semester units. It's just, that's just the way it is. So that's where department chairs come into effect because there's no standardized testing to test out of these courses. It's a matter of having a platform where they can look up maybe the syllabus or what is taught in the class. And then therefore the chair can approve this class as a substitute for what would be introduction to criminal justice at a community college. I hope that answered the question. or I don't know if it confused people more. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so then I zoomed in on the CLEP courses. So these courses right here where it says credit 111 on the bottom left, that means that this student basically it's self-paced. They studied, right? And they read a book, they study this course online, and then they take a test. So for example, it says principles of marketing. So they studied, they take a test when they're ready. If they pass the test, they get a credit for passing that course. So that's where it gets a little bit different also, because at a regular community college, you wouldn't be able to test out of principles of marketing, right? So it's like, how do you give that student credit? Although they did study, they did read the book or whatever it was that they needed to do to pass that exam. So it's almost like a standardized test, and it's for everyone. The test is the same. And students will take these courses because it helps them, like once I said before, to get promoted. On the right, that's where you're going to see this is that's a pretend makeshift person, and it's a Coast Guard. And you'll see courses like introduction to scuba diving, right? Advanced scuba diving, these type of courses. So that's when students get a little discouraged, and they're like, how am I supposed to translate these courses into a community college, right? Similar to somebody that's a field artillery person, they're used to shooting cannons in the military. It doesn't really translate into a community college course. However, some of these courses, like for the example, the scuba diving, underwater welding, right? If they were required to take physical fitness classes for kinesiology, perhaps the department chair for kinesiology may be able to give them credit, because clearly if they're able to do underwater welding, they have advanced scuba diving, they can most likely swim, right? So those type of things are things that we should consider when looking at the joint service transcript, and the willingness to accept those courses as substitutes. Okay, and then I think the next slide. Okay, so next slide. This is the website that a student would go to. So if they come to you asking, let's say you do have an articulation platform at your school, and they ask, how do I get my JST? This is where you would find it. So you would go to this website, and I tried it this week to make sure how responsive they were. When I sent a question to them, it took them so they responded the very next day. So they're very responsive. For example, when I try to log in and pull up my JST, there was no record of it. So it's depending on what branch you're in, could make a difference in where your record is located, right? Each branch has their records in different areas. For example, Army is in Missouri, right? So the Navy, the Marine Corps might have your records somewhere else. So this is the website they would go to. They would create an account. If they're active duty, they would go to the CAC login, CAC login. If they are not, then they would register for it if they are not active duty. Okay, and then next slide is this one here is basically once they log in, this is the first screen they're gonna see. When you go to my inquiries, that's where you're going to ask questions, right? Hey, I cannot locate my account. What's going on? My JST does not include classes I took at, the Naval Academy or the University of Arizona when I was stationed there, right? And then that's when they would respond the very next day. And then on the left, you're going to see download my JST. That's where the student can download it for themselves and they get the unofficial transcript. And then if they request the official transcript, that's where they have it sent to the actual college and university. So that's my portion. Thank you.
So I think in the last, 5 minutes, I'll get through this. I talk really fast, so forgive me, everybody. But Nick explained what they do when they're in the military, and Kevin explained how what they do gets transcripted. And another thing is how do we convert what the military do in their training to be able to articulate that to our courses. And anybody who's been in the community college system knows that articulating courses is much easier said than done. We've got community colleges within the same district that don't articulate their classes. So there, I teach anatomy and physiology, and I have a 2-semester anatomy and physiology, and some colleges will not accept the first half of anatomy for their second half within the same district. So articulation is something that's very difficult already just to begin with. Never mind when we're talking about courses that have been taken by the military or their occupation specialties, meaning their jobs with the training that they've done as they're working. So fortunately, when it comes to military credit for prior learning, we have the aid as faculty on how are we going to, look at these courses and occupations to be able to articulate them to our courses. We have the tool of the American Council on Education. So the American Council on Education have been around for a really long time, 1945. They are the ones that are going to send faculty, disciplined faculty, to go out and evaluate not only the courses, but evaluate the occupations to see this is what we recommend as to what they've done. Now, when I get an articulation as a department chair, as a faculty member, I look and I see the alignment of my student learning outcomes, right? I look at my student learning outcomes, I see what the course that I want to articulate, are all the points hit, and does this articulate or not? We do not have that ability to be able to do that with the military transcripts. We will not get the books that they use. We will not get the exams that they've done. We will not get anything. This is all evaluated by the American Council on Education. They have a contract with the Department of Defense, and every year the courses that are taken by all the branches, or all the courses that are provided by the branches, will be evaluated by faculty sent by ACE. And they're the ones that make the recommendations. So if you were looking at the chat, some faculty that know, and if you can go to the next slide for me, Nick, some faculty, the course objectives is SLOs, and the same as course objectives. We have to talk about that. No, outcomes and objectives are not the same, but John, we've corrected that. So we'll talk later. The ACE transcripts have what is recommended. I'm sorry, the JSTs have the ACE recommendations. Now it's up to every single college to look at these ACE recommendations and see, okay, you know what? ACE has evaluated these courses, these occupation specialties, and this is what they consider it equal to. And when they're looking at it, they look at the content, the scope, and the rigor for these courses to say, are they the same? Should they be granted equivalency in lower division, upper division, CTE, or even graduate level courses? And how many units? And there we're talking about that question where we had, are these semester units? Yes, I think it's called the Carnegie unit. And they will give you in semester units what they consider equivalent. Okay, so as a faculty member, when you're asked to evaluate, does this articulate, you will not be provided anything of the normal things that you usually get to articulate a class. And this is where it becomes very difficult then for faculty, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that what we're providing the student is the training and the education that they've received in the military training. Does that equate to what we're teaching in the classroom? Because we don't want them to go on and not have the things that the material or the information or the background that they're going to need to succeed in future classes. So what ACE does is they evaluate courses, because within each branch of the military, they will offer courses, and not just anybody can take these courses. And when we say take these courses, they have a central authority that does it. They have a formal assessment. You have at least 45 academic hours. So as Kevin was saying, this is done by hours and not so much as semesters. So we've got this kind of equivalency of yeah, it sounds like little time, but in hours that the student was required to study, it is equivalent. Next slide for me, Nick, thanks. Are we running out? Oh, we're okay, we're out. So bottom line is that for ACE to make a recommendation, they will have at least a minimum of 3 faculty members within a discipline from an accredited institution that has taught the course in the last 2 years will evaluate all the materials. They will actually go, they will actually see all the materials that are there, And this is how courses are going to be evaluated. Not all courses will get any evaluation, and they'll say, sorry, this is not, difficult enough. It is too military specific, or it just does not have enough time to be articulated. And that is the recommendation. And for ACE to make a recommendation, they have to have at least 3 faculty from the discipline agreeing that we recommend at least 3 units. So the question for faculty really will be, because faculty will ask me, I want to see their SLOs, I want to see their outcomes, I want to see the textbook that they're using. You will get none of that. You need to be able to say, can we rely on ACE's recommendations? And bottom line, it's faculty that have evaluated this. This is not military people that say we want them to get credit for this. These are disciplined faculty that have been paid by ACE, and they've taught the class in the last 2 years, and they will look at everything that's presented. They will talk to students, which is something. So when you get an ACE evaluation, my biggest problem with my faculty has been, do you trust these? And my best way to say is, do you trust these, is go on one of these evaluations yourselves. There's your information to sign up. And you can not only evaluate your courses, but their military occupation. And I'll leave it at that because we've run out of time. But hopefully this has been a little bit helpful. And the idea Jolina, you've served as an ACE evaluator. It is a great experience. I completely agree with you, Jolina, because it's one of those things that you don't realize the in-depth education that these students are receiving, and how they truly deserve that credit, whether it's in a course or whether it's in a military occupation specialty. So you'll have the slides, you'll have the links at the end of the slides. You have links to all of this information as well. We're actually going back to the main session. So there are all the links that you can see. There are other states that have been doing this quite a bit. If you have any questions, please reach out. Feel free to reach out to me or Nick or Kevin. I'll put in the chat my email as well. And I hope this was at least a little bit helpful for you to be able to start moving forward the articulation at your colleges for military education and experience. I really appreciate you coming. Thank you.